Sleek and sophisticated, powerful Porsches don't shy away from battle. And these highly engineered, race-ready, grounded rocket ships don't shy away from fierce on-track action. With the spotlight high and bright on this nation's top racing talent, the Ultra 94 Porsche GT3 Cup Challenge Canada is the premier road racing series. Trois Rivieres represents a pivotal stage in the fight for the 2016 championship. Hello and welcome. We're just off the shoreline in the St. Lawrence River in Trois Rivieres, Quebec for the 10th race of the 2016 Ultra 94 Porsche GT3 Cup Challenge Canada presented by Yokohama. I'm Dave Bradley along with veteran Canadian racer Kyle Marcelli and Todd Lewis is trackside. Kyle, we're at the 47th edition of the Grand Prix of Trois Rivieres, and this really is quite an event.
Yeah, it sure is. This city shuts down for this annual August weekend. The track is 11 turns, 2.48 kilometers, walls on both sides. Makes for some exciting racing, and like any street course, no room for error.
Two drivers have been dominating the championship so far this year. There's one of them, Scott Hargrove, and the other one is Daniel Morad. And earlier today, Todd had a chance to catch up with your two title contenders.
Let's focus on the front row because it is quite a championship battle that is going on between Scott Hargrove and Daniel Morad. Scott, you were the winner in race number 1 this weekend in Trois Rivieres with an aggressive move. Are you trying to take hold of this championship fight?
Yeah, well, I think that all this year that we've proven we're really quick and probably deserve to be leading the championship. But obviously, with a little bit of a mishap in Toronto and not being able to finish the race, I have to be aggressive and chase down for the championship lead now. So I'm going for it. I'm going to win it. So I'll do everything I can to make that happen.
Good luck today.
Thank you.
All right, Scott Hargrove, just one half of the cage match that is going on in this series, and Daniel Morad is the other. He finished in the runner-up spot yesterday. Daniel, a solid finish, but you want the victory. Do the damp conditions maybe help you out a little bit today?
I mean, regardless of the conditions, I think it's going to be a close fight between Scott and I yet again. I mean, all season it's been the story of the championship. It's been Scott and I, even against the U.S. competitors. So yesterday, I mean, I felt like I was, I'm a bit bitter about it, I have to say, just because I felt like I was passed unfairly. Great move, great attempt, poor execution, and in my view, I think he should have given the pass back. But you know what? The officials made the call at the end of the day, and we have to go by whatever they say. Today's another day. I'm going to go for the win and hopefully bring a little bit more of a gap in the championship between us.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Daniel Morad on pole today, trying to seal up this championship as best he can with a race victory.
And this certainly has turned into a two-horse race coming down the stretch. Yesterday, the series held the 9th race of the season here at Trois Rivieres, and it was Allegra Motorsports Oakville Porsche entry of Daniel Morad with the pole.
Like any single-make championship, this first corner and the first lap is so crucial. Where the competition is tight, you want to get the lead and really control the race.
And we've seen contact between these top two drivers in the first couple of corners. Did not see that here in Trois Rivieres. But then, as we work our way through turn number 3 down the backstretch is where we saw a pretty controversial pass by Scott Hargrove. Here goes.
And you can see Morad was playing a little bit defensive, but left just enough room for one car. Almost looked like there was a bit of debris actually on the road, which caused Scott to lock up and make contact. Certainly an aggressive move on the start of this race.
What do you think? All's fair in love and war?
Like I said at the beginning, you know, controlling the race is so important in a single-make championship, and Scott knew that. He wants to get the lead, and Daniel knew that as well, being defensive. You know, in that particular scenario is the contact I would put on Hargrove.
No harm, no foul as they kept going, but then you saw the gold class cars battling very, very hard through this one. Martin RV in the 08 making contact with Sean McKaig, and McKaig gets the worst of it going around.
Yeah, again, we're seeing a late aggressive moves here, trying to get the lead in the early stages of the race.
CRV not happy with what played out in that one. Valerie Chasel making her return to the series. She battled hard with the number 88 of Marco Storoni. And problems for the number 78, his Mark Motors Racing teammate, Zachary Robichon. This brought out a caution, driveline issues on that Porsche. When we did go back to green, the number 28 of British Columbia, Scott Hargrove, would hold off the 17 of Daniel Morad on the restart, and he did what he had to do the rest of the way. It would be Hargrove's 5th win of the year, as a big smile on his face on the top step of the podium. And as the champagne got sprayed, it was the points championship that tightened up between Morad and Hargrove. Just 3 races left, and Morad now holds a 1-point lead over the number 28 of Hargrove. Tight down the stretch.
Yeah, you don't see a championship battle like this that often. It's really great to see this rivalry here between Daniel and Scott. It's great for the fans and great for the series, as I've said before. You know, brings us back to, you know, certain eras in Formula One, and really exciting.
Now let's send it down trackside for today's opening ceremonies.
Prononcer l'invitation traditionnelle à lancer les moteurs. To pronounce the traditional starting invitation, accueillons une légende du sport automobile, vétéran du Grand Prix de Trois-Rivières dans les années 70 et 80, Elliott Forbes Robinson.
Driver, start your engines.
One of the famous names and faces that don the walls here in the Grand Prix of Trois Rivieres. The engines fire up here on the front straightaway. Saw Chris Green, his last ever Canadian GT3 event. He'll move on after this race. He'll start on row number 2. So you can see the ground is a little bit wet. We did have some overnight rain. We'll talk about that in a little bit as the field starts to roll off. Let's first take a look at your starting grid. Daniel Morad and Scott Hargrove, as we mentioned, make up the front row here in Trois Rivieres. Chris Green and Etienne Bourget make up row number 2. Taking a look back to row number 3, Zachary Robichon, the rookie in the number 78. Tim Sanderson drives the 07. Looking back to row number 4, the 88 of Marco Cerrone, and Ori Fidani drives the number 13. Row number 5 is Valerie Chasson in the number 27. Martin RV drives the 08. Row 6, rounding out the field, the number 34 of Sean McKay, and that is your starting lineup here in Trois Rivieres.
And as we can see those damp conditions, it's going to be real important on this opening lap here to generate heat in these Yokohama tires. You know, there's one dry line, which is the race line, and you can see offline it's damp, so overtaking on this first lap could pose issues.
On slick Yokohama tires, how much does that damp line really affect? Is there traction out there at all?
Well, the tires are cold, no, there won't be a whole lot of traction, but if these guys can get heat in their tires, then yeah, they can run offline here and there and be okay.
And we'll take a look at the race analysis. It's a 45-minute timed race. This is a legendary circuit. 2.46 kilometers and 11 turns. No pit stops today. It's a little cool and a little overcast. Before we go green, let's head down trackside and check in with Todd.
Just before we get set to get rolling this afternoon, guys, I got to tell you, a number of the drivers spoke to me earlier and said they're kind of sorry it's not raining a little harder. They said, hey, if it's pouring, that creates chaos sometimes. It also creates opportunities, and everybody's looking for an opportunity to move forward on this tight track here at Trois Rivieres. Maybe we'll have some rain, maybe we'll have some chaos. We will have some great racing throughout.
Well, Todd, they call rain the ultimate equalizer because it takes horsepower out of the equation. We'll see what happens here today. It's a long 45 minutes as the field bunches up, anticipating the green flag. Again, a timed race here at Circuit Trois Rivieres, the Grand Prix de Trois Rivieres for the Ultra 94 Porsche GT3 Cup Canada by Yokohama is underway.
You can see Chris Green got a great start. He looked real eager on the warm-up lap.
This is a much cleaner start, though, than we saw in race number 9. The field a lot more separated as we head through turn number 3 in the Duplessis gates.
Now you can see guys locking tires in those first 2 brake zones of turn 1 and 2. Again, the damp conditions and the cool tire, they're going to lock tires until they can get some heat in this Yokohama.
Down the back straightaway for the first time. This is where we saw Scott Hargrove make that controversial move. He locks up the left front, but not close enough to make an attempt on Daniel Morad. The 17 continues to lead. The open road Porsche number 28 of Scott Hargrove chasing the Oakville Porsche number 17 of Daniel Morad. Morad has about a 2-car length gap now on your second place runner, and this race is so important in the points, as we talked about coming into this one. Just 1 point separating these top 2 drivers, and Morad will collect a bonus point for leading that lap. Looks like this one might be a 3-horse race very shortly. Chris Green has jumped up and has joined that battle, not too far behind the 28 of Scott Hargrove.
Yeah, Chris looked real eager in that warm-up lap to be a part of this battle. And, you know, again, this is a tight street circuit. Overtaking is very difficult. Track position is so crucial. So that opening couple of laps, while tires are still cold, is very important.
How long will it take to really dry, you know, more than just that one line once they get heat in these tires?
Well, if nobody's driving offline, it's never going to dry.
You can see it's a pretty rough track, though. City streets, you see these Porsches bouncing around. But so far, everybody staying off the walls here in Trois Rivieres, Quebec, as we ride on board your race leader, Daniel Morad. This is the 10th race of the Ultra 94 Porsche GT3 Cup Challenge Canada by Yokohama, and it's brought to you by Porsche. And for all the latest news and updates, visit Porsche.ca/GT3 Cup. Still under green here in Trois Rivieres, Quebec, and it's still Daniel Morad out in front of BC's Scott Hargrove. Chris Green holding down third spot, but it looks like once again this is going to be the Morad and Hargrove show. But you see Zachary Robichon, the 78, locking it up in the Mark Motors.
Yeah, Zach had a big lockup there. You can see these cars don't have ABS, so all of the modulation needs to take place in that driver's foot. You know, he needs to be able to know that I'm locking a tire and to modulate off the pedal, and that was a big lockup there for Zach, but good on him to get it collected before it was too late.
And it is pretty intimidating here, much the same as we saw in the streets of Toronto. Walls on both sides. You make one small mistake, there's not a lot of runoff.
Yeah, you could easily get caught in the deer in the headlights, so to speak.
Very, very easily. There you see the Pfaff Porsche of Chris Green going through the Duplessis gates, holding down third spot. This is a battle for the Gold Cup lead, though. The 08 of Martin Harvey and the 34 of Sean McCaig just in behind the number 27 of Valerie Chasson, and Chasson currently in the 9th spot.
Again, we've seen these guys all year long. Another rivalry amongst the championship in the gold class.
And Sean McCaig comes into this one leading that Gold Cup class in points. He's ahead by 8 points over Martin Harvey. And Harvey's coming off a pair of wins at Toronto. Frustrated in race number 9 here in Trois Rivieres, but this battle has been going on just like this all season long as a battle for 9th overall here today with the 27 of Valerie Chasson.
You can see Sean there just playing in the mirrors of Martin, and Martin playing a little bit defensive. So these guys are having a great fight, giving each other great racing room, and we're still very early into this race, so who knows what's going to happen.
But it's really tough to make up points in this class because these two drivers have really been back and forth, first and second all season long. So first will give you 20 points, second will give you 18 points.
Yeah, that's a good point, Dave. You know, they have to avoid DNFs. You know, that's the big thing in a class such as this where there's not a whole lot of cars that make up the grid. Certainly a close competitive fight here. They're either finishing, you know, the first, second, third each race, but DNFs are not going to be good.
Sean McCaig in that draft down the back straightaway. He takes a look out once again, as you mentioned, playing in the mirrors of Martin Harvey and the McDonald's-sponsored Porsche. Now he looks to the inside, but he doesn't have enough. Martin Harvey's going to block that dry lane and keep the 34 at bay.
Now it looks like Sean has the pace to get by, and like I said earlier, he's just playing in the mirrors right now, trying the inside, trying the outside, hopefully forcing Martin into a mistake that he can capitalize and get the position.
There's a Mark Motors number 78 of Zachary Robichon chasing Etienne Bourget. That's a battle for 4th spot, and Bourget comes super close to the wall.
He sure does, and again, these street courses are just classic for, you know, you need to use every bit of the road you have to get the lap time, and you know, we're seeing that again here.
And you saw those right side tires just offline in that wet line a hair, and there he goes again, nearly getting into the wall.
Here we got McCaig down the inside.
Turn 3, that's a tight place to pass, but McCaig's going to make it stick. Put the Pfaff Porsche ahead of the 08 of Martin Harvey, and McCaig goes to top spot in the Gold Cup class.
You know, Sean did a good job there, taking his time, really working Martin, and eventually found the hole, got down the inside. Very clean racing room on both parts, so well done.
Martin looked like he was going to defend to the inside, but there was still enough room there left for the 34 to make it through, and McCaig makes it stick. This is back at the front of the field, though. The Oakville Porsche, number 17 of Daniel Morad, continues to lead Scott Hargrove. As we look a little bit deeper in the field, the 88 of Marco Cerrone and the number 13, the yellow and black Porsche, that's Ori Fidani, a battle for 7th spot.
We're seeing great fights all the way through the field here. And again, by this point, these guys got good heat in their tires. They're up to speed and just looking for tenths of a second. Everything matters. And especially on street courses like this, it's difficult to overtake, as I've said. So you just really got to force yourself into the mirrors of the competitor ahead and hopefully put them into a mistake.
And you saw a flash of the red and white 07 Allegra Porsche. There he goes again. That's Tim Sanderson just ahead of this battle. But Kyle, we are seeing this track starting to dry up just a little bit more.
Yeah, we sure are. You know, these guys aren't worried about cold tires at this point. They're up to temperature. They're pushing everything they got out of these Porsche 911s.
Zachary Robichon, the rookie, pushing hard on the number 2 of Etienne Bourget, who locks up going into turn number 1. Boy, here's a driver that's really impressed a lot of people so far in 2016. The rookie, Zachary Robichon, coming out of the open wheel ranks, jumping into a full-fendered race car for the first time and really turning heads.
So not only are these drivers dealing with difficult damp conditions, but also just the undulations, the bumps in the pavement that you can see right at the apex back there. You know, that upsets the car, and that's also going to prone to locking up the tires. So these drivers are just trying to avoid bumps, find the line in the road that's smoothest and easiest on the equipment.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, as a driver, do you take a mental note of where it is the roughest, especially under braking, and maybe next lap say, it didn't work out there, I should go over here?
Yeah, you'll start the weekend off with a track walk, and these guys will look for things like that in the surfaces, you know, finding the bumps, finding the apexes, you know, even simple things like runoffs and safety zones. All that takes place on the track walk, and then they'll store those notes away for the race.
Yeah, you hope you don't have to use those runoffs at any point during the race. But this is a great battle here for 4th spot. Etienne Bourget in the 2 and the 78 of Zachary Robichon, but back at the front, it's been all Daniel Morad since the drop of the green as Scott Hargrove continues to give chase. Welcome back to Trois Rivieres, Quebec. You're watching round number 10 of the 2016 Ultra 94 Porsche GT3 Cup Challenge Canada by Yokohama. I'm Dave Bradley along with Kyle Marcelli and Todd Lewis's trackside, and the gap at the front is gone. Scott Hargrove from British Columbia is catching your race leader, Daniel Morad. There's a good look at the Pfaff Porsche of Chris Green holding down 3rd, and this battle continues to rage in 4th. Etienne Bourget in the 2 being chased by the 78 of Zachary Robichon.
Yeah, it's easy to get caught up in overdriving your car. When you're in a battle like this for position, whether you're the guy leading or the guy chasing, you can easily just overdrive. And when you're overdriving, you're making mistakes. We're seeing this again by Etienne, and also on the 78, they're just pushing these cars to the limits. You know, wheel spin off the corners, and sometimes you just need to tell yourself, you know, take a step backwards and you'll actually drive a little faster.
Slow in, fast out, as some would say in the corners. But Kyle, is it better to be the leader or the chaser?
Always better to be the leader. You know, you're controlling the race. You know, as long as Etienne just stays online, doesn't make mistakes, it's going to be very difficult for the 78 Zachary to get by.
But is it easy to get hooked into your mirror and just start paying attention to what the person is doing behind you?
Yes, unless you're in control. You know, if he's calm and collected and just running a consistent pace, you know, not making mistakes, he'll be fine. It's that when he gets distracted watching his mirror that he'll make a mistake.
And you can hear them over the bumps as the engine jumps in revs as we rode on board the 78 of Zachary Robichon. Remember the 2 of Etienne Bourget Bourget did not race with the series in Toronto at our last stop at Exhibition Place, so this is a return to the series for the number 2 of Etienne Bourget, and he's running very, very well here today. Back at the front, though, Scott Hargrove in the number 28 from Tawasin, British Columbia. A town that means from the ocean, the southwest corner of BC. There's not much of a town there, but he is proudly from it, and he's just a little bit over half a second back of Daniel Morad for the race lead.
Yeah, you can see the experience in those 2 drivers up front and the confidence and comfort in these cars, because they're pushing every bit as hard as Etienne and Zachary, but you don't see them sliding the car or all squiggly coming off the corners. You know, they're a little bit more in control, and just, you know, they're driving at 99%.
And to put it into perspective of how tight this series has been between Daniel Morad and Scott Hargrove, really these 2 drivers are splitting race weekends. So there's 2 races every weekend. One wins the Saturday, the other one wins the Sunday, and they go back and forth all season long. So again, it's very, very difficult to make up any points.
Yes, it's so exciting to watch, and like you said, the points battle is so close, and they just can't afford DNFs. You know, in a championship like this, you got to be smart and win races when you can. And if you have to take a second place today, or if you've got a third place car, just settle in and take that third. Don't risk it for the second.
Back on board, Zachary Robichon as he continues to chase down the 2 of Etienne Bourget. And we talked about DNFs in the championship and what that means in the overall picture in the Ultra 94 Porsche GT3 Cup Challenge Canada by Yokohama. You remember, in Toronto, the number 28 of Scott Hargrove was well out in front on Saturday in the feature race then, and unfortunately suffered a DNF, and that cost him big time in the points as Zachary Robichon takes a look.
You know, the other challenge these guys have as drivers, especially the driver such as Zachary here in the 78, where he's looking to get by the 2 of Etienne. He needs to make that happen quick, earlier in the race. When you start following a driver for laps and laps on end, the lead driver begins to learn where you're stronger and where you're weaker, right? And it just makes overtaking even more difficult.
Whoa, Robichon almost making contact there with Etienne Bourget, taking a look as the rookie getting hungry, looking for that 4th spot. '26-year-old Daniel Morad leads the 10th race here at Trois Rivieres, Quebec, but the 28 of Scott Hargrove has closed the gap and is now putting the pressure on.
And you can see this 2.4 kilometer track is a very short, quick lap. You know, we're only 18 minutes into this race, and they're already coming around on the Gold Cup car. So yeah, we may expect to see the traffic one more time before the end of this race.
Heads-up move by Martin Harvey, though. He did check his mirrors and let the leaders go by. Now watch Scott Hargrove. A couple of different views inside the cockpit of the number 28. Love watching drivers at work as he goes to work chasing the number 17 of Daniel Morad, hard under braking into turn number 1. Turn 3 is a possibility for a pass.
Yeah, great onboard shot, and you can see hands are busy. These guys are working the cars.
And it's rough. I mean, that gives you a really good idea of just how bumpy this street circuit is. Down the back straightaway, Hargrove once made a move. That was a little bit risky. Last race in race number 9. This time he'll tuck in behind. And these drivers are using every inch of this racetrack as the number 28 Porsche Center Langley Porsche of Scott Hargrove chases the Oakville Porsche number 17 of Daniel Morad. Look at the lap times on our leaderboard across the top of the screen. Hargrove quicker that lap, and now he's cut the gap back to just over 0.3 of a second.
Yeah, these guys are fighting for tenths of a second, and much like that battle for 4th, you know, Daniel needs to just understand where he's quicker and where Hargrove's quicker, and you know, play defensive in the corners where Hargrove might be a little faster and really, you know, push the limits where he's a little bit stronger right now.
But put yourself in Hargrove's seat. You've managed to close that gap. It was almost a second at one point, and now you're down to just over 0.3 of a second. You're quicker than the car in front of you. How much do you get the bit between your teeth?
Yeah, and you know, especially here when you see a little bit of traffic up ahead, that really gets you excited, and you think, okay, this might be my opportunity, and you really just try to set yourself up thinking, you know, a few corners in advance.
Right now, he's just tucked in the draft of the Porsche Center Oakville number 17 of Daniel Morad. That's Sean McKeag in the 34, just ahead of your race leaders. He'll be checking his mirrors, seeing the leaders back there and wanting to give them as much space as they need. He won't want to be the one to interrupt this lead battle.
Yeah, and Sean's got quite a gap right now on Martin, so he's going to want to do the right thing and just move over as he did there.
That's exactly what he did.
Class
Into
move.
turn number 1. Both drivers clear the lap car of Sean McKeag in the Gold Cup class, and Daniel Morad maintains the lead. But again, 0.3 of a second, so he holds that distance back to Scott Hargrove. What a dice we've been watching here in Trois Rivieres, Quebec. The Grand Prix of Trois Rivieres, what an event this is. The city really shuts down and embraces motorsport for the entire weekend. Several different series making a stop here this weekend, and the fans come out in droves. Also, the battle for fourth is another one we've been watching between the 78 of Zachary Robichon and Etienne Bourget in the number 2. That one is closing in as well as the drivers make their way past our vantage point. And you take a look at the lap times, it looks like Zachary Robichon just a little bit quicker than Etienne Bourget. There you see Chris Green in the Pfaff Castrol Porsche holding down third spot, just quietly going about his business today.
Yeah, it becomes a long race out there. I mean, I've been there myself. You know, when you got nobody in front of you and nobody behind you, all you can do is think about your own line.
And Robichon has managed to get around the number 2 of Bourget, but for how long is Bourget hard on the brakes into turn number 1? He was trying to get it back, take advantage of that lap car. As you mentioned, Kyle, it sets up an opportunity, but unfortunately for Bourget, couldn't capitalize there.
Yeah, we saw a little bit of a lockup actually from Etienne. Here we go, Zachary setting Etienne up.
It looks like it's that lap car that really gets into the mind of Etienne Bourget, and he doesn't quite close the door. Robichon a little rub, and away he goes. So Robichon leading the number 2 of Etienne Bourget. That's a battle for fourth spot as Daniel Morad still top of the charts in race number 10 here at the Grand Prix de Trois Rivieres for the Ultra 94 Porsche GT3 Cup Challenge by Yokohama. We'll be back. Well, this is going to make things interesting. A slight drizzle has moved into the Trois Rivieres area. Hands are moving on the steering wheels, and the wipers are starting to show up on the windshields of these Porsches. And the Yokohama Slicks searching for traction on this race course, but this is definitely going to spice things up, isn't it, Kyle?
Sure is. We saw Morad get a little bit of oversteer off the corner there. You see here the wipers are moving. You know, definitely going to separate the men from the boys in these type of conditions. And Daniel's got a little more risk here, being that leader. You know, he's kind of first to experiment, you know, how much grip the track has with these conditions. Scott's just got to follow along.
Now, you remember before we went to break, it was dry, and it was Scott Hargrove who was turning the faster laps of the 2 leaders. Daniel Morad has now switched that, and he's starting to put in the quicker laps and open up a little bit of a gap.
Yeah, you know, the rain, especially on when it's damp and just light bit of drizzle like this, it can play mind games with you. You know, you think conditions are worse than they are, and it might force you just to lift off that 10th or 2. So we've seen Scott drop back a little bit from Morad.
We see Etienne Bourget go by in the 2 car. He's sitting in 5th spot, and we ride on board your Gold Cup class leader, the 34 of Sean McKeag.
And again, you see the difference here in the Gold Cup car. Sean's got the sequential gearbox. Now, it's still an auto blip, but he's got effectively a manual gearbox.
Zachary Robichon's been able to open up a gap after that nearly race-long battle with the two of Etienne Bourget. But here are your two race leaders, nearly identical lap times, and now it's almost a second-and-a-half difference between the top two cars. But we've been running for about half an hour now. The heat's built up in these Yokohama slicks. How much does it help, even with this little bit of drizzle?
Yeah, I mean, they've got enough heat in their tires now that this little bit of a rain is not going to affect too greatly. You know, they get the wipers moving, and then they can gauge how much rain is coming down. It's sort of trial and error, really. You got to just find the grip, and you might sacrifice a few tenths on those first few laps, and then you build your speed back up again.
Grip looked pretty good if you watch the hands of the 28 of Scott Hargrove. In the open road racing, number 28 sitting there in second. The 17, Daniel Morad, continues to lead. Look at this gap all the way back to third. We're waiting for Chris Green. There he is in the Pfaff Porsche number 9.
Yeah, and at this point, you know, Chris is not gonna, doesn't look like he has the pace to challenge for the leader, so his best thing is just to collect third place points today. You know, recognize, okay, I've got a third place car and I'm just gonna settle in, run consistent laps, not make a mistake, and take home third.
A good look at the Pfaff Motorsports driver involved in his last race in the Porsche GT3 Cup Challenge Canada with Pfaff Motorsports. Chris Green moving on next year, but he's putting in a pretty good showing for his final race behind the wheel of that car. Fifth spot belongs to Etienne Bourget. Again, another driver all by himself at this point. Zachary Robichon has set sail after these two battled very, very hard for so long. We should mention, too, the Masters drivers involved in this race. You'll see the 88 of Marco Cerrone at times in the Mark Motors prepared car. He leads the 07 of Tim Sanderson by 8 points coming into this race. And again, that's another class that's very difficult to make up points because those two drivers went back and forth all season in the Masters class. The picturesque Duplessis Gates as your race leader Daniel Morad from Markham, Ontario, goes through. The Tawasin, born and raised number 28 of Scott Hargrove, giving chase. Tawasin, a small community in British Columbia. And there's Martin Harvey, the 27 of Valerie Chasson, Ori Fidani in the 13. That wiper going strong. Not a battle for position on the racetrack. Just a fun dice amongst these three drivers.
You can see Martin again getting out of the way to let Valerie in a quicker car go by. Looks like she has some damage on the left rear. Not sure what that was caused from.
The rear bumper cover completely torn off. The Total Lubricants number 27 of Valerie Chasson. I'll have another look as she makes it through turn number 3 and heads down the backstretch. Yeah, you can see the big gaping hole in the left rear corner of the number 28. Or 27, I should say. The Porsche Prestige prepared number 27 just ahead of the number 13 of Ori Fidani. And over that big bump, that one really seems to affect these race cars. You can hear the engines rev and the cars hop along as they make it over that big cahoot. And in the background, you saw the 88 of Marco Cerrone. But are these drivers at all worried going over that of maybe driveline issues, or you just hit it and go?
Well, it certainly creates a lot of excitement. It doesn't seem to be affecting the cars too much. You know, they're just being patient to power, get over the bump, then put the power down. But it looks to be okay so far.
Good look at Martin Harvey in the McDonald's-sponsored 08. As the field continues through, Harvey's having a pretty decent 2016 season. Again, comes into this one second in Gold Cup points, chasing the number 34 of Sean McCaig, and that's what he's doing in this very race. Sean McCaig 9th overall in this race. Martin Harvey a couple positions further back in 11th overall. But nobody seems to have the speed of the top two. Daniel Morad and the number 28 of Scott Hargrove as Hargrove continues to chase the rabbit at the front of the field. 34 laps in the books here at race number 10 of 12 to make up the Ultra 94 Porsche GT3 Cup Challenge Canada by Yokohama. And the 2016 season, Daniel Morad in the race lead, comes into this one with a slim 1-point lead in the Platinum Cup class. Scott Hargrove is the one chasing him in the points race, and so far this race has been caution-free, which is a little bit odd for a street race, especially one like Trois Rivieres, Quebec, that is so tight and so demanding.
Yeah, it's so common to see, especially in these double-header weekends, when you've got a caution-filled or even a caution in race one, drivers just seem to have a different mentality in race two. You know, we've experienced a lot of the same thing this year in the championship I'm part of, and it's just one of those funny coincidences.
When you're getting down to the end of the season, you know how important points are, and you know how important those positions are, so you tend to take extra risk, don't you?
Yeah, I know, you sure do. You know, especially again in the championship like this, where it's just so close. Every point, every position matters so much.
On board, Chris Green in the FAF-prepared Porsche, the Castrol-sponsored green, red, and white, familiar-looking Porsche GT3 as he heads down the front straightaway, sitting in third spot. He's going so quick, he's blown the number off the front windshield of that race car. But still not quite as quick as the race leaders, Daniel Morad and Scott Hargrove. Just about 0.2 of a second off pace that last time by.
You can see Hargrove flashing his lights there in the background, you know, doing everything he can to distract Daniel and hopefully put him into a mistake.
And you see Marco Cerrone, the Mark Motors number 88. He's your points leader, as we mentioned earlier, in the Masters division for drivers 45 years old and older. He's also racing in the Platinum Cup class, but Cerrone comes into this one comfortably in the points lead by 8 markers over the 0-7 of Tim Sanderson.
Again, what a great onboard shot. You can really see just how narrow the street circuit is here.
Walls on both sides. It's a little intimidating when your apex is the end of a wall, isn't it?
Now we've got headlights being flashed by more. It looks like it's for the 08 up ahead, which is a lapped car.
Does that work as a driver when you're being passed? Does that pick up your attention and you think, wait, I gotta get over?
Well, it works if they're looking in the mirror.
I guess you hope when you do it.
You saw the blue flag there, actually. That's just a notification from the corner marshal to that slower car saying, hey, you've got quick cars coming up behind you.
And there you see Scott Hargrove doing the same thing, letting Martin RV know he's got more than one car in behind him. Morad makes it around. Hargrove's not going to be able to, makes contact. Harvey goes around and into the wall. And you can see steam onto the 28 of Scott Hargrove. You can see it blowing up over the roof. We'll have another look.
Well, yeah, you can see Hargrove's got a lock up there in the brake zone. I think he expected Martin to know he was there and to open up the door a little bit. Tough day for Martin to have that contact.
On board the 28. It wasn't much of a hit, but there you see the steam, the radiator at the front of this race car, obviously getting some damage, and there you see water pouring out of the front end of the Porsche Center Langley number 28 of Scott Hargrove.
Oh, what a disappointment. You know, that's the last thing Scott needed. You know, we were seeing a great fight up until now between Morad and Hargrove, and, you know, Martin should have known that if there's one quick car, hey, look in the mirror, there's probably another one there right behind him. Hargrove was a little bit over-aggressive trying to make that move while he had the opportunity, had the lockup, and then unfortunately got into the back of Martin.
This will be tough in through turn number 6 for Scott Hargrove. He makes it, but there's still water pouring onto his front tires. He stays in this race, might be looking for pit road this time by, but you remember, points are so important coming into this one.
Yeah, you know, we've still got just over 4 minutes remaining in this race, and it'll be very close to make it to the end. You know, he's losing all of his water from the radiators right now. I'm sure he's watching the temperature gauges.
And Marco Cerrone has the wiper on because he is getting drenched in behind this number 28 of Scott Hargrove.
It'll be interesting to see also what the series decides on this, the fluid being put down on the track, if they're going to force him to come into the pits.
Now look at the last lap difference. You can see it on the top of your screen, a 1:05.5 from Daniel Morad, and Scott Hargrove, a 1:08.9 that last lap by. So he is really in protection mode, trying to keep that car together.
Yeah, such a disappointment after, you know, we were seeing a great battle. At this point, Hargrove's, you know, needs to try to hold on to second place. It looks like he's got about a 10-second lead over Chris Green in third place. We'll see if the equipment can last that long.
And Morad has opened up a 6.5-second lead over the number 28 of Scott Hargrove. Marco Cerrone in the 88 is not involved in that battle. He's back in 8th position in the Mark Motors green and black Porsche. But the 78 of Zachary Robichon is currently sitting in 4th position. We'll know that Hargrove has had issues, and Green locks it up as well. Robichon tucked in not too far behind Chris Green. You remember, Robichon comes into this one 3rd in points, so he has an opportunity to make up some ground if the 28 doesn't finish.
Well, you saw that lock up there from Chris. All of a sudden, he's turned up the wick. He smells that there's an issue up ahead. I'm sure he's been notified by the team, and he's going to be eager to hunt down 2nd place now.
Robichon is doing the same as we ride on board the rookie from Ottawa, Ontario, in the 78 Mark Motors prepared Porsche GT3 Cup. In the Platinum Cup class, chasing the number 9 Pfaff Motors Castrol sponsored car of Chris Green.
Yeah, that's just the exciting thing about auto racing. You never know what's going to happen. With just 3 minutes left to go, there's a huge shakeup in the grid now all of a sudden.
And Hargrove is not too far ahead of those two, as the number 28 is slowing in front of them. Still on track is the Porsche Center Langley number 28. You see that windshield wiper going, but no more steam out of that Porsche. It looks like all the water is gone at this point. At what point does your temperature gauge reach out and tap you on the helmet and say, we're going to overheat?
Yeah, it looks like Robichon's really closed the gap up on Green as well in this late stage of the race.
And Daniel Morad continues in top spot. He'll put another lap on the 34 of Sean McCaig. McCaig, your race leader in the Gold Cup class from Guildford, Ontario, running for Fiorano Racing Porsche. Sean McCaig having a great outing, look to extend his points lead in the Gold Cup class. He's looking for his 2nd series victory.
Looks like we're going to see white flag this time by, just signaling to Daniel that there's 1 lap left in this race, and at this point he's just on cruise control. He's got 15 seconds over 2nd place. We've got a battle here for 3rd between Robichon and Green.
And they've made it around the 28 of Scott Hargrove. It's a battle for 2nd, and Robichon smells blood. He locks it up. The white flag is waving for your race leaders. Robichon is coming and looking for more, currently chasing the number 9 of Chris Green. Hargrove has fallen off the pace.
That's an impressive late race drive by Zachary to close the gap.
And it looks like Zachary Robichon with that brake lock up, he might have blown his opportunity. He was right on the back bumper of the number 9 of Chris Green in a battle for 2nd, and now look at the gap between them.
He's not giving up. He's still pushing everything he's got. You see a little bit of oversteer coming off the corner.
And Scott Hargrove has pulled off. He's out of the race. He's pulled off across from pit lane. There he is at turn number 11. He currently sits in 5th spot. Talking with series officials, but it looks like his day will end early. He won't make the checkered flag this time, but Daniel Morad, who's done everything perfectly so far today in all 45 minutes, he'll go by his closest competitor, Scott Hargrove, and Daniel Morad takes the win in Trois Rivieres, Quebec. And the 34 of Sean McCaig will come through. He'll take the checkered flag in the Gold Cup class. As you see, the 28 of Scott Hargrove gets moving again, so he'll salvage some points and bring home an 8th place finish.
Well, that turned into a great day for Daniel Morad, you know, especially in the points, as we've talked about, with just every position matters.
A pump of the fist. You don't think he's happy? Come back. We'll talk to him in victory lane. Daniel Morad pulls into victory lane for the 4th time in 2016. The Toronto native pulled it together for a wire-to-wire victory, and he took to the streets of Trois Rivieres to celebrate just moments ago. And Todd standing by with the Oakville Porsche driver.
Helmet and Hans device comes off. Daniel Morad's smile is clearly visible. After frustration yesterday, satisfaction today with the victory.
Yeah, I mean, I said it before and before the race, and I think things ended the way they should have, and I got one from from up there for sure. You know, after the tight battle yesterday with Scott, I felt it was a bit unjust. So, I mean, things sorted themselves out in the end, and I'm so thankful for the team. I mean, they never gave up on me. We didn't have the best race yesterday, even though it's second. You have to put it into perspective. It's, you know, it's neck and neck with Scott, so every point counts, and today was huge for us. I can't thank the guys enough. It was amazing.
Daniel Morad, your winner here at Trois Rivieres.
And you see his car owner, Carlo de Casadas. He'll start to celebrate in victory lane. Let's take a look at the finishing order, and way shuffled up from what it was about 3 laps to go from the finish.
Yeah, lots of excitement in the closing stages of this race. Great drive by Zachary to close the gap on Chris and really fight for second, and as well to Etienne Bourget on P4.
Speaking of second, Todd's with your second place finisher, Chris Green.
Looked like you were going to finish on the podium. Now it's a second place result. Reasonably satisfying end to this run in the series?
Yeah, I mean, listen, the podium's a podium. I mean, obviously Daniel and Scott are in the league of their own. I was just cruising around in third. At one point, the team's like, just cruise it, and that's exactly what I did. Problem was, got the brakes too cold, worked the front tires too hard, so when I saw Zach starting to catch up a little bit, I started putting a little bit more pressure on the car, and I started locking up and making a few mistakes. But hey, you know what? Second place, Pfaff Motorsports, Pfaff Porsche in front of Castrol here, which is fantastic. Really happy to be part of the series for 4 and a bit years, and looking forward to bigger, better things next year.
Well done.
Thank you.
And now we'll take a look at the points, and it is Daniel Morad who really takes advantage of a misstep by Scott Hargrove. 13 markers now the difference.
Yeah, that's going to be a tough gap to close in the final 2 races of the championship as we go back to Canadian Tire Motorsport Park.
Undoubtedly, though, it will be exciting as we head back to the Toronto area. There is your podium, and Daniel Morad reaches high to the sky. A big smile on the face of your winner here today. And one driver is doing anything but smiling is Scott Hargrove, coming home 8th. Todd standing by with him. Todd?
Scott, it looked like it was going to be another podium finish. Take us through what occurred from your seat.
Yeah, well, we were both pushing hard through traffic, and you know, there's still 2 races left after this race, but I wasn't going to wait till those races to try to get the championship lead back. So I was pushing for everything, and unfortunately, back marker didn't move, and I was braking late, and just no room for both of us. So punctured the radiator. I tried to keep going, but then with 2 laps to go, it ran out of water, so I had to pull over.
Tough break, Scott Hargrove. We'll see you next at CTMP.
And 13 points between that man, Daniel Morad, and Scott Hargrove. Is that attainable? Can you make that up in a couple races?
It's going to be very challenging with 2 races to go. You know, Scott's goal needs to be to win the races, and hopefully there's some attrition, hopefully there's some luck, and we'll see what happens.
Today's race from Trois Rivieres, Quebec has been brought to you by Porsche. And for all the latest news and updates, visit Porsche.ca/GT3 Cup. An exciting day on the streets of Trois Rivieres. We started with a damp racetrack. We didn't know what the future held in store, and there was lots of tires locking up in the early going, including from the 78 of Zachary Robichon.
Yeah, we saw these drivers really fighting the challenging conditions of the racetrack. We saw close battles all the way through here in the Gold Cup, as well in the Platinum Cup.
And there is Robichon, who battled so hard with Etienne Bourget for the majority of this race before squeezing past near the midpoint.
And it looked like things were sort of settling in until some late race attrition, and it really threw the whole race for a mix.
Well, that attrition was the 28 of Scott Hargrove. A little bump punctured the radiator. His race was done. Daniel Morad takes the win. From all of us at Fuel Media Lab, we'll see you next time.